And welcome back to another incredible episode of the Indie-credible podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Xander Scullion, and who are you, sir?
Oh, I'm Jeff Wittenhagen, crazy famed author, publisher, and crazy drunkard extraordinaire.
I would say a tequila enthusiast.
Tequila enthusiast. Yeah,
Yeah.
We were chatting tonight because in the Army, and we had a little event, and I drank a few extras. I'm like, hey, do you want to wait to record, or do you want to see how far the rabbit hole goes, Alice?
and for those that are watching the video podcast, you'll probably think the same thing I did, is I thought that Jeff was drinking pickle juice. I'm like, is that pickle juice?
Tequila and Mio. Tequila and Mio. It's a lemon lime Mio. It looks like pickle juice, though. I was like, yeah, sure it is. It is spicy, though.
Yeah, I didn't know
tequila.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like some sort of like after hangover like melody or something, but like, oh, drink some pickle juice after you drink, you won't have a hangover or something. People do stuff.
The secret is I just avoid the sugar, because the sugar is what gives me the hangover. So I just avoid sugar. So like the Mio is in my mix instead of having a sugary mix, I'm good.
Well,
but
you know what else?
I can't just drink gallons.
You know what else is good? Indie video games. That's what we're talking about.
Oh, good transition.
Yeah, because we got a lot to talk about in this episode. A lot of cool stuff. Goodness. Looking at the show notes, let's see. What you want to start off first, telling folks about our Facebook group page and Discord?
Yeah. So we always have a few things going on. We had indie video games on the Facebook page, which there's been a lot of posts this week again. I've been posting as I come across stuff because having collected and finding all of these indie games every week, I will post a few now in the Facebook group as well as in the Discord group. So on the Facebook group, it's Indie Video Games is the group on Facebook. There's a lot of people in there chatting all the time. And then on the Discord, it's on the Hagen's Alley Books one, which the link will be in the show notes, of course. And we've been chatting. Actually, there's a bunch of YouTubers in there because initially, I had people that I know, and I know a lot of, content creators and things from years of being a book publisher and all that. And I've been talking about a couple Metroidvania games with the Metroidvania guru from YouTube and asking if, the one cool one from Discord this week was talking about Deviator. And the Deviator is worth it because it is a very known one-for-one hack, not necessarily a hack, but takes too much tribute, too many liberties from Hollow Knight. It's like a damn clone.
Oh, wow.
So we see the screenshots, okay, if that was Nintendo and that was Mario, Nintendo would go after them. Or Pokemon and Pal World.
There's like a thin line between being too much like it, and I've had some of that issue with some indie games in the past where I'm like, I really like the game, but it's way too much like Mega Man. It almost feels like at that point it feels almost too much like a fan hack, a fan-made game. Like when you'd play back in the day, you'd play those Castlevania ones, Castlevania Curse of the Eclipse, and it's just a reskin Castlevania 1. Maybe the pixels are a little different or something like that. So yeah, that's always I don't know. It can be interesting.
And I do plan on playing Deviator pretty thoroughly just to see how similar it is, because it looks really good, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite indie games, a little bit of foreshadowing. There is something not in the show notes that I wanted to ask you about. Because when I go out every week, I do runs and stuff, and I come up with ideas, and I forgot to put it in the show notes. And I mentioned Nintendo going after Pal World. Do you know what Nintendo actually went after Pal World for?
I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I know they make it look a lot like Pokemon. They got some reused stuff.
And that's what everybody thinks. But what they actually went after them for was using specific gameplay mechanics that Nintendo is trying to patent.
Whoa.
So imagine, because Nintendo realistically has never lost in court. They've settled, but never lost in court. So imagine if they win. And now they have patented gameplay mechanics in the Pokemon style. So now indie game collectors, this is very relevant to indie video games, cannot make games with those mechanics, and other publishers can now patent other. So who's to say they don't patent Mario platforming?
Yeah, I was just thinking that, or like Kirby, like you can't make another game where you're like sucking in the enemy and getting your abilities. I was like, oh, that's too much like Kirby.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
And so obviously it feels like it's okay. They're going after these people because they're literally taking like Pokemon themed and look-alike characters and giving them guns and doing extra things and kind of taking their IP and taking a little bit too many liberties with their IP. But they're doing it in something that could potentially change the landscape of video games as we know it. Fortunately, so far, the U.S. has completely thrown that out, but Japanese court is where they're going through, and Japanese court is notoriously one of those courts that's going to go for that type of thing. I didn't know this, but I heard on online that there was a lot of the YouTube strikes when it comes to Nintendo content comes from Japan. And so a lot of these bigger YouTubers will limit their reach in Japan because then they won't get copyright struck. Like Nintendo of America, Nintendo Europe won't do it. It's Japan. And
That's
so
interesting.
So it's an interesting thing what do you think about that though, Xander? Like what?
I'm not for it. That sounds like a terrible idea because I feel like it's going to limit. Most importantly, it's going to limit creativity. I mean, it would almost be like if someone did a copyright on like an A chord on a guitar, and it's like, you can't do that chord anymore because now it belongs to Tom, Dick, and Harry, and they'll sue you. It's like
you can't have a hockey mask killer that uses a butcher knife because Michael Myers uses the butcher knife and Jason Voorhees uses the, you know what I mean? Or machete for Jason Voorhees. Like that would be why. It's same thing with movies and film. Like, so I don't think that should ever be a thing. I don't think it ever will be a thing because of it's a creativity barrier. They didn't create that, mechanic per se. Whatever. It's like, but maybe then we got to figure out what left and right limits are that would be allowed to do that. Because then it becomes that you have to ask for permission.
Well, when it comes to Power World, like the only because I want to play Power World, and I saw that it recently came out on PS5, and honestly, the whole Nintendo and Power World like fighting is like the only thing that's made me not like dive into Power World. It's like $30 on PlayStation. And I was like, I don't want to pay $30 for a game and get invested. So what happens if I really like Power World? And then like my luck, I'd get into it, and 2 weeks later, it's like, oh yeah, it's gone.
So it's been on Game Pass forever, and I played it on Game Pass, but I have the PC Game Pass, but I played it on my Legion Go. And this was back before I moved from Hawaii. I played the hell out of it. And so for me, it feels like you're playing a Pokemon version of Breath of the Wild.
That sounds so cool.
With like Minecraft building mechanics. So like I found like this peninsula out in a certain area, and I was building my area because you'll get raided by enemies and you'll get raided by things. So I put out a peninsula that they can't access me. And I was building this giant compound. And my thought was as if my daughter, London, she's 12, if she wants to go and play the game, I'm creating this crazy compound for her, and she could start like being like mastering the game. The thing is about it is it's not just like crazy open world, but then there's these areas you can go to, caves you can explore like a Zelda. Like that's why I write in Breath of the Wild, because you can like go into these caves, explore, and get a treat in there or something.
Yeah.
And there's bosses too, and there's boss fights in certain areas too. Like they'll have a an objective. You can go fight a boss inside of a tower somewhere.
That's so much. That's so freaking cool. That's
Yeah.
like I said. That sounds like right up my alley. But like I have the worst luck. I'm telling you, you guys don't want me to download Power World. If I download Power World, it's going down. Like I'm telling you, if I download Power World by the time we get to the next episode, and then our new update's like, well, Nintendo shut down Power World. It's
womp,
me.
Womp.
Blame it on me.
Damn it, Xander. You fucked it all up again. The other piece with our, beginning portion is the Indie Gaming Gems YouTube is still going strong. Launches every Friday, 3 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, it's not necessarily building Steam's new YouTube channels. They do what they do. But now we have 20 games out there of amazing titles that you may or may not have heard of. When we get into, future episodes, I do have one that's a little bit more popular games, but they're still indie games and they're still indie gems. It's not hidden. They're indie games. So there's still some really, really cool ones that are popping in, like your Balachos and stuff. This one though has like from this week's, because there's always like a little bit of a delay between podcast and episodes.
Yeah.
There's this Noria Metroidvania game. It's just so cool, looking with the little subtle colors and things. It's such a badass game there. And I think I recorded it long ass time ago too, because like I record and have a nice little backlog. Like I've recorded all the way out past Thanksgiving at this point or something, and like it's months from the time we're recording this. So
Oh yeah, it's like a time traveler.
I mean, and the cool thing is the idea is the podcast, the YouTube channels. I got a book coming with Indie Gaming Gems. It all fits together, and we're gonna eventually make this all available for posterity physically. So it doesn't matter about views and subscribers and all of those superfluous things. It matters about the content that we're doing right now and what we're doing with the pickle juice.
And that, yeah, and like I threw that in there. And for me, like like I've always said in like a weird, selfish way, that me personally being like a co-host on the show, I'm always finding out about new games. Like that's the most exciting part for me. Is just because you have such a knowledge of like indie games. And I mean, some of the indie games that we wrote down as some of our favorites. I was looking at mine, and mine are pretty old. Like I got some older indie games that
ones.
and I think some of them are like still some games that may be well known, but at the same time, there's probably folks that still haven't played them, and that's really cool. It's really cool.
Say, I hope people played a few of mine. Some of them are super fucking popular at this point, but I mean, it's a cool thing, and just having a good time, having fun. And I mean, both of us were pretty much sucked into a game we talked about in the last podcast episode. Like that's basically all I've been playing this week, and combined with one of the other chill ones I play. But like that's it. That's been my life, is those two. And I haven't played any AAA titles. Like I didn't go back to Astrobot this week at all yet. I might just, like during the weekend or whatever, I might get on it, but I haven't.
Well, one game I did play this week on my CRT television on my Dreamcast was a little indie game called Gunlord.
Awesome game.
So good. And it's funny because I got Gunlord X on the Switch, which is like the HD remaster.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, and it, it's a great game if you like Turrican and,
I was going to say, from you being a classic gamer, what would you compare it to? If you compare it to Turrican, you're correct, because it absolutely feels like a Turrican, but like modernized, and
then it's got the shmup levels too, like the side scrolling shoot 'em up. They have some of those levels too. So I mean, it's good, and it was funny because when this game was announced years ago, I was just like, oh my god, they're making Dreamcast games, like, because that was the big thing back then. And I'm thinking this is Gunlord. It was talked about in what, like, I want to say like 2011, 2012 when that game was released.
Maybe that was when they first started it. And here's the thing: I don't only have Gunlord on the Switch and on Dreamcast. I have a Neo Geo copy.
That's what I was about to say too, because it was also released on the Neo Geo.
Now, something that a lot of people don't know, is that NG Dev Team, who created, these games as the publisher, they actually stopped doing Dreamcast games and only focused on the Neo Geo side. And do you know why that is?
Why is that?
Rampant piracy.
Yeah.
So the Dreamcast, literally plays burned discs. So a lot of people wouldn't even spend the less than probably like $40 to buy the game, and they would just download it and burn a disc. How do you have a CD drive anymore, let alone a burner? But and then I could see people when they still had CD drives on the laptops. I could see them doing that. But the Neo Geo, there's no easy way to replicate. And I'm like, man, that sucks though, because you're seeing all these future games that came out, like Krautbuster, for example, that came out later, which I think I pre-ordered Krautbuster before my daughter was born. I think I just got it. She's 12. I'm just saying, I think I pre-ordered that game before she was born.
Wow.
But Krautbuster doesn't have a Dreamcast version, so then you're only limited to be able to play that game if you have the Neo Geo. And, you got converters, so you can play it on the Neo Geo, but that stinks because
makes sense though. Makes perfect sense, because that was one of the biggest downfalls of the Dreamcast. I have a CD wallet full of burnt Dreamcast games from back in the day. It was me. It was all me.
Now, the biggest reality, the biggest downfall was because Sega kind of mismanaged their add-on system on the Genesis era, and then rolled out the damn Saturn with no fanfare. And so then by the time they pushed out the Dreamcast, which was fucking amazing growing up in that era, I was in high school.
Yeah.
The Dreamcast was awesome.
Yeah.
It was too little too late. The Dreamcast, if you look back on it now, it's cool as shit. And the fact that they're still making games for it, there was pretty good emulators on there with playing NES on it and other stuff too, which was awesome. The controller had the little VMU. It had a lot going forward. The first online connectivity built into the console that worked real well. Because there was other online connectivity before, but that one worked pretty damn well. I think it was Windows Millennial Edition or Millennial Edition. But that was built into it. It was not necessarily ahead of its time, but it was right there at the cusp. And but I feel because of the mismanagement of years prior, it was a little bit too late for Sega on the hardware side, to the point where they needed to be compete with Nintendo, or they were done.
And by the time the Dreamcast came out, we all know the PlayStation brand was just so big. I remember, back then being a kid, and some folks were like, yeah, we want to get the Dreamcast, but PS2's coming out next year. It's going to have a DVD drive. So
as a DVD player, and at the time, damn DVD players were expensive, and the damn, you can get a PS2 and a DVD player for the same price.
What was your first? I was going to ask. Sorry to cut you off. What was the first DVD you got?
The first DVD that I bought was Final Destination. It was the cardboard shell.
Yeah.
When they have the cardboard with the little plastic clip on it. That was my first one. I was in college at that point when the PS2 came out.
And
then Sony did it again with the damn Blu-ray player.
Yeah.
For the PS3. So they had those mediums, and then they just incorporated it. Technically PS1 had CD players in there.
Yeah.
So they did that with every single one, making it a multimedia device. They got a little unfocused with the PS3 era. But PS2 was killer.
Yeah, my first DVD was X-Men. That was it.
That's another classic.
Yeah,
it's another classic. And so just imagine, this may be on a DVD or a Blu-ray, probably Blu-ray, but it's
we'll put it on a laser disc.
Put on VHS, laser disc.
Yeah, VHS all the way.
Real. I'm old.
At this point, where the podcast is going to be on clay cylinders. With little grooves.
Little
crinker.
What the hell? Nah, ridiculous. No, the only reason why I say probably Blu-ray is just because of space. I think we can just toss the content on it.
Oh yeah.
But who's to say, man? 'Cause that's the fun part is, back in the day doing video game bullshit a while ago, we did only audio, and the fact that we got easy ways to do videos now.
Oh, it's incredible.
And it's like back in the day, I had to make sure I had a high quality microphone and all this, and I'm literally on AirPods now, which even a year ago would have been shitty, but there's certain ways to make the quality awesome. It's like, it's like, it doesn't matter. And this month they're rolling out a new version of the converter that I could be in. They showed an example that you're in, like with jackhammers going on with like road work, and you can't even hear it.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I was recording the other day because Premium has premium directs for the fall direct. I was recording out by the street while my daughter was having an appointment. There's cars going by. You don't hear anything. That's crazy. Cool. That's crazy, man. Freaking wild.
So for this episode, you mentioned earlier, we were going to talk about our favorite indie games. It's like our favorite indie games of all time, like our top, like
time.
Let me ask you this. Like, what is it that you look for in the indie game that like really, ignites it?
So for indie games, number one, I feel like that there is a certain starting point indie game. So I'm not going to jump back in Activision era, because technically, like, Activision broke away from Atari and then created Pitfall, and David Crane created Pitfall on his own, and like a bunch of guys created Kaboom. They did their own thing as like small indie developers. And technically, like, even in the Atari, it's like one developer made E.T. and Yar's Revenge. Howard Scott Warsaw, which he liked that I shared his book a year ago. So what I'm looking for though is, number one, it's a personal thing, but has to be done in a small capacity, not necessarily one person, but it's like, if I'm looking at it and Natsume does it, I mean, hell, Shadow the Ninja that we've talked about kind of falls into that. That's not necessarily indie, but still could be a little underground, and maybe a small team within that company works on it. Still counts. But when I'm talking favorites of all time, I'm looking into stuff that falls into the realm that just sucks me in. The quality is at another level and potentially does something that sets a new standard. There's a game that I don't have on here. There's a game that I don't have on here that's in my fifth of the list. I just didn't put it on here, but I will talk about it. But it's like, it's just one of those things. So each one of these games that I have all had done something unique to the point where it has set a new standard. Some have created genres, essentially, or redefined genres into a new realm. What about you?
I'm very similar. One of the things that I really try to look for is, because I think one of the biggest draws, especially to like retro inspired indie games, that really draws people in, is that retrospective of like previous games. I mean, we talked about how some games completely mirror some and whatnot. I'm looking for the game that, it might make me think of Castlevania, but it has its own personality. Because there are times that I will play an indie game and it's just way too much, way too similar, and I'm just like, it doesn't have an identity. So there's something that I like personally with the retro indies, of that familiar aspect of like being, like, oh, well, this is something I've played before, but at the same time, like someone's inspiration. Like, I look at it kind of like music, I can listen to a band and I can be like, man, I can hear some like Black Sabbath influence. Like, I can hear, they're not doing riff on riff from Tony Iommi, but it's something that sounds like Black Sabbath, and
not rip it off War Pigs or something.
Yeah. And I love Black Sabbath. So hearing their inspiration to Black Sabbath makes me automatically have like a draw to them. And I'm the same way with indie games. Like, Berserk Boy, a game we talked about in the last episode. What I liked about Berserk Boy, it was obviously inspired by Mega Man, the Mega Man series, but it was Berserk Boy is its own identity too. Like the game, the hero, everything. Like it's not just, Mega Man 2.0,
Yeah.
Like I really like
where does that fine line exist? Because you think about it too. Another one we talked about in a previous episode, Iron Meat.
Yeah.
Similar is that to Contra, the Alien Wars, and Contra Hardcore? Is it? Yeah. Very similar, especially when you consider Probotector in Japan. Like there's so many similar crossfires, but it does do its own thing. But like, where does that fine line exist?
I will say this because I really enjoyed Iron Meat, but the problem is when I played Iron Meat, Konami had finally put out a new Contra. Because here's the thing. Konami, we wanted a new Contra like since the DS era. So like that was kind of an edge that a lot of indie teams had where like they could make it very similar, like Blazing Chrome. It's very much like Contra Hardcore.
Well, when you say it, you have to go Blazing Chrome.
Blazing Chrome. But yeah, like it had, it was like, man, I really wish, Konami would get off their ass and make a new Contra. Look at Blazing Chrome. Look what these small guys are doing. They're doing exactly. But the problem is, it's like when Konami finally put out Contra Operation Galuga, and I played it, and it's good. It's not amazing. It's great. It's like fun. When I played Iron Meat, it was just kind of like, well, I played Operation Galuga, and like Iron Meat is like very, very, very Contra, but very bloody. You know? It was, but it's not a bad game by all stretch of imagination. It's a good game, but I don't think I had the same sort of like enamored like feeling towards Iron Meat like I would have if I didn't play Operation Galuga beforehand. I don't
understand. So
it's a weird thing,
and it came out too close to it. And the thing is, they were working on Iron Meat years before. They just kept on refining it. And that is something to be said about indie games is sometimes their production, they kind of missed out on the opportunity, or they stop and miss out on adding features, which there are some games. I mean, we talked about a Questmaster in a previous episode that does everything to a high level. But then there's Super Dungeon Maker that's also a Zelda maker, but it's not going to have the whole overworld portion. So you're going to have a game that's coming out around the same time that's going to outshine it in a retro aesthetic because it took so much longer for Super Dungeon Maker to come out. And it's the same thing that I feel like is happening with Iron Meat. There was another game that I played this week, not in the show notes, and it was a successor to a game made by a company that has the rights to the original and reprogrammed it. I played Gimmick 2.
Oh.
And so Mr. Gimmick is, one of the classic Japanese and PAL exclusive only NES titles. It plays amazing, really tight controls. And they had ported it. It's by, I think, Bitwave Games, which is part of Embracer Group, which is in that limited run games bubble. I think they're on their own, but, I would assume that there's going to be a limited run physical release of this. They did Gimmick 2. I didn't know it was coming out, just like a couple of these. I played it, though. Overly cartoony. The controls aren't exactly tight like they are on the NES. And then there's like this pixel perfect with no pixels, pixel inch perfect platforming where I kept dying over and over. And it's not like there's a penalty. There's no life system. You can continue to keep starting over. But it's just like, it didn't feel as fluid and I didn't feel as masterful as I played it. And so now I'm feeling a certain way where you got this spiritual successor to a game that we never got in the US that's a classic for NES collectors. You got a sequel to it on modern consoles right now. And I'm like, man, you just missed it by like that much. A little bit how I felt with Shadow of the Ninja.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's easy I feel like it's easy to mess up on that sometimes. Because all it takes is one little thing.
But and if like us as the people you want to, the retro gamers you want to connect with, and you're missing it with us, I mean, we mentioned it, 40 games a day. So there are so many. You're gonna miss it with the general population, and it's just not gonna catch fire. And that's the thing. They want their games to catch fire, explode, so that way they can get some sales, and they should if they're spending this much time with the game.
Indeed.
It's craziness.
Well, I mean, you know what else is crazy? Talking about our favorite indie games of all time. That's just madness.
Well,
I don't even know where to start.
Well, and the funny thing is that I think we talked about in the last episode. I'm gonna have to create a list. I created mine this afternoon, this evening. Guys, completely forgot. And then I had to do 2 lists. Because my thing is I have to do my top indie games, but then I feel like I'm a bit of a shill if I put Premium Edition Games, the company that I started, their games in that list. Some of those games are in my list, so I actually created Premium Edition games specific that I could talk about later, because some of these games are freaking amazing. But like, do I have a bias because I had the privilege of preserving them physically? I would say yes. So I won't include any of those in my list. I did pick out 4 games that I feel like are fucking amazing. But if you look at those and you compare them to the all-time classics, if you don't have the added nostalgia of being one of the people who physically preserved it, you probably won't have as much connection as I would. So I kind of made that separate. But I do want to talk about those certain titles and why.
Yeah. For me, like I just got a couple of games, and I tried not to think too much into it. I just thought of like indie games. Like when I think of indie games, what are the titles I think of? Like that's what I thought, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I went back and
What is your oldest game? Because I got my oldest game.
My oldest is going to be, and I think I mentioned it on the last episode, is going to be Limbo. That's probably my oldest.
Okay.
Because Limbo was like kind of my gateway into getting into the indie industry of video games with the Xbox Live Arcade, and it was just, and it was one of those games that like the graphic style. The playability of it, I was like, man, this is really, really cool. It was something very different because, we think about Limbo and it's a very popular game now, but at the time when it was out, that's when you had the Call of Duties and Gears of War and everything was just brown and gray. And, Limbo is very dark and shadowing, but it's got a very cool, like, animation. I don't know, made me think of like a Tim Burton movie. And it's like one of those games that you look at it and you're like, oh, that's Limbo,
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing is like, so I went back and only picked 1 from back in the day. We had talked in the previous episode about Super Meat Boy. I'm not including it because I feel like that's a little too easy for me. But the one I did choose was literally the one indie game, the movie, like Fez. Fez is a game to me that kind of changed what an indie developer could do. It's made by one person. And you're literally looking at this game. And I spent years playing this game and just going away from it. I mean, I played the original one on the original Xbox 360. I assume it was on the 360.
Yeah, it was.
Played the hell out of it. Never really understood a lot of the really, really subtle, crazy puzzles to figure out some of the cubes. But moving from Hawaii out here to Texas, I actually played in hotels a few nights and followed online guides and completely beat the game, realized there's antimatter cubes, all this stuff, was able to get through the entire game. It is such an amazing experience going through. And some of these puzzles are so fun to do. And it's very like, once you actually learn the world, it's very interconnected. It's a perfect experience. Kind of similar to what Tunic followed now, which is not in the list. But Tunic had it because I also played that while I was moving. And Tunic also felt the same way, but Fez did it first.
Yeah, I still need to dive into. I have Tunic downloaded on my PS5. I still need to play it.
Yeah. Well, as similar to Fez, I had to look up some of the puzzles online because they're very, very obscure, especially to do the final thing. There's a code you have to put in with the controller Konami code, but it's like 50 characters or something. It's insane. Wow. And you got to find this and put it all together in the game. And so if you can do that, you are like borderline like puzzle genius. There's no way I could have ever figured that out. And you could beat the game without it, but you get the bad ending. Yeah, like I wanted to get, I got the bad ending. I'm like, all right, how the hell do I do it right? And then I followed the guide. Like it's, and I got no qualms about it. I'm here to enjoy games. I'm not here to be a master of games.
Yeah,
I play things for enjoyment. I'll follow a guide if I need to. I'll use freaking PC mods if I need to. It's fine. I'm here to enjoy stuff.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The next one of mine is it's super popular, but it's got a lot of history. And this game, I think this is one of those games that came out at the right time. And I'm talking about Shovel Knight.
Oh my God. So many that I hadn't included. Shovel Knight is.
And then, Shovel Knight, yes. Shovel Knight's I'm looking at the amiibo. I got the Shovel Knight amiibo. I just looked at it. But Shovel Knight,
big deal. That was a big deal that an indie game got an amiibo.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, Shovel Knight's like everywhere now. But man, when Shovel Knight came out, I remember I downloaded on the Wii U. And this is like when I was really that's when my retro collecting was at its peak. I was getting a lot of retro stuff. So it just came out at the right time because I'm like, man, it takes so many elements of so many retro games I love. It had its like Mega Man kind of feel to it. DuckTales with the way the shovel, you could use a pogo stick out in it. But at the same time, it felt like it had its own identity. It was like, it took a lot of inspiration from a lot of NES games I grew up playing, but it was also on its own, almost like the way, it's a weird comparison, but this is how my brain's working tonight. It's almost like Shovel Knight to me has become almost like an indie icon as like art from Terrifier in the horror culture. Because people are looking at, Art the Clown. They're like, he's got the possibility of being like the Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees. And we saw that with Shovel Knight, because Shovel Knight was this game that has its own personality now.
When Terrifier outperforms every other movie at the box office, which it did, let's be honest here, like it is at that cult status now. And Shovel Knight is a good comparison to that because Shovel Knight at one point was the indie game in all of the indie games. Like it have a Shovel Knight's in Blast from Master Zero as a playable character. Like it's in a lot of stuff. Like it was the de facto. They did smart with their marketing. And
so it's crazy.
So my thing is that like playing it, and I think it was the Wii U version. I had like beat it and had fun with it and loved it. I actually never did get through and play through any of the DLCs because they did like three DLCs. They're cool as hell. They're amazing. But I had moved on. Like I had beat the game, put a bow on it, and I'm like, oh, they put out another one. Cool. I want to. But like if I had started, I probably would have beat all of them. And they're all equally as cool, have different mechanics. They're amazing. Yeah. But like because then they changed Shovel Knight to be Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope or whatever. And so I played the original Shovel Knight, beat it, and that was that. Like, that was my thought. Now I hadn't went back and done the Spectre Knight, and I haven't done the King Knight, and I haven't done, I think there's a third one too. I hadn't done any of those. And then and now there's a fighting game too, right? All DLCs were free, which is amazing that they did that. I hadn't went back and beaten all the DLCs.
I haven't either.
Might be blasphemous. I don't know. So my next game though is in that realm, same era. So going in the same era of a Shovel Knight. I would say it's equally as popular. It might be more popular.
Yeah.
Mine is Undertale.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't know if you've experienced the full Undertale, but I have experienced Undertale in two different ways, which gives it like an ultimate nostalgia for me. So you have the original Undertale when it came out on the PC, playing through it, and I had no clue. I wasn't watching YouTube videos. So I'm playing through it like a role-playing game. And you know what happens when you play Undertale as a role-playing game and you're taking on enemies and everything?
I'm not sure. I've actually never played Undertale.
Oh my gosh. So, spoilers for a 10-year-old game, Xander, but if you play through Undertale and you're killing people and everything in an RPG as you do, you don't get a good ending because you've literally killed the townspeople within the game, and they're doing these things where it's like levels of violence. You're leveling up LV.
Yeah.
Your LV goes up. Your level goes up. Level of violence. And it's like all of these things are like, you're like at the end, you're like, what the hell? And then here's the thing. You're like, oh, I regret all the things, right? You get beat by the end boss and it closes out your game and deletes your fucking save on the game. And you open it back up and then the guy comes out and talks shit to you. It loads up your game, and the same flower when you start the game talks crap to you and goes, oh, you thought you were going to get away with that? No, you're not getting away with that. I remember. And then say you go back in and go, all right, now I'm not going to do it. It remembers that your previous game, you killed people. It does all of this. It remembers everything. So that was my experience with Undertale, and I went through and it was so cool. Beat the game, had the thing, but only beat it like that. So years later, got the Nintendo Switch version. I'm like, I ain't killing nothing. I'm going to do, it's called pacifist mode, because you don't have to attack. You can negotiate and talk to and save everyone. Even about everything. And so I got to a certain point where, because you don't level up, then these enemies keep getting stronger, but your level's 0 because you haven't leveled up nothing. You can die, hit all this stuff. So I eventually had to stop. I was at one of these bosses. But my daughter then, like years later, she's now almost a teenager. She's super into Undertale. Knows about all the memes, everything. So her and I started playing it a month ago. And she said, oh my God, you haven't killed anyone yet? Let's do the pacifist mode. We went through, because I had been so meticulous, there is a true pacifist mode where you have to use specific things throughout it. You'd have to play the game twice if you miss certain things. I actually met all the criteria for true pacifist mode out of one playthrough on the Switch. True pacifist mode, you get a secret boss and everything, and he's a crazy ass boss. The story is so cool with that. And so we got the whole true pacifist ending, and then we decided we're gonna play through a second time, and we played like once or twice so far with mods on, and we're gonna go complete crazy, kill everything. Because there's one where you find and kill everything in it, and like there's a different end boss and everything. So there's a normal mode, there's like a pacifist / true pacifist, and then there's genocide mode. We're doing genocide mode.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what Undertale is, and the thing is Undertale like created a whole new subcontext. And there's like communities around like the lore of Undertale, and the characters of Sans, the little like skeleton guy who does a little smile and the wink, and Papyrus, who's his brother, is crazy. Like there's so much lore with that game that it is taken on its own thing. And Deltarune came out, which was like the spiritual successor. I think there's only a couple chapters, and then Toby Fox is creating this slowly or whatever. But like it is a thing. That's where like that is to me true indie. Did something brand new with a role-playing game, threw it out its head, blew people's minds, and is still making waves.
Yeah, I still need to play it. Now, where would be a good place to start? Would you say like the Switch version's like fine?
Oh yeah, Switch version is great. Or Steam or whatever you like. It's fine. I get it on sale, whatever. And just play it. And then now that you know that you can choose your path, you won't be completely blindsided, but you're still the whole story, the whole game. I mean, it's an avoid 'em up style RPG. So you're not just necessarily fighting and attacking, but you have a heart. And so there'll be like certain different attacks that come after you and stuff too. So especially when you're doing the pacifist mode, you're not attacking. So you got to do negotiation and avoidance. And it's fun. It's a whole different genre if you play it that way too. It's like two different genres, two different ways you play the game. It's wild.
Wow. Well, the game that I was going to mention, you remember a little dev team back in the day called Probe?
Probe, of course.
Oh yeah.
Andrea, you're going up to tiptoe around.
Oh yeah.
She's like going like this in the house. Like she's fine.
Well, apparently this game was made from some folks from the Probe days, Paul Heyman and Sean Scapple.
Did you say Paul Heyman, like Paul Heyman from ECW? Paulie Dane. We're about to go down. But Paul Heyman. No, Paul Heyman, damn it.
But the game I'm talking about is Horus. Did you ever play Horus?
So I hadn't heard of the original Horus. I did play the Switch version of Horus.
That's what I played. That was in 2019. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting game.
It is so good. Because, I mean,
you get a lot of the humor, though. It's a lot of British humor.
That was what I was about to say. There's a lot of British humor to it, and that was something that kind of resonated with me because that was very different. I've always had like the weird feel like a wonder when it comes to like gaming over the pond. It's like so interesting. Like they're the humor and of course the computer games and stuff. There's a lot of that in Horus, and it's also just a really cool story and a really fun platformer.
Very wild story.
It's cool. Like it has a lot of like influence. It almost made me think of like Ready Player One with its influences of like 80s and 90s pop culture that they incorporate in Horus. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's got that,
it's like a spiritual, it's like almost like a remake of the original, right? So
yeah,
like they had that original in there, and like, there's so many little references though. I only played it for a few hours, maybe 3-4 hours or something, but I was pretty engrossed and it was fun. And I think I just eventually had to go eat dinner or something and never went back to it. That's is what happens, man.
But yeah, it's a fun little, platform. You're playing as this little robot. It's almost like Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Like you want to be a real boy.
And you mentioned like classically British. Have you ever heard of or played Slaps and Beans?
No, but it sounds delicious.
Yeah, delicious. There's technically 2 of them, and they both have physicals on Nintendo Switch. Super rare, pushed one out. But Slaps and Beans is a like action movie duo from the UK that were almost like freaking Indiana Jones or something. And they had this, but it was more like comedy. And they had like tons and tons of movies. I never even knew anything about these guys until I had to watch a documentary on them just to see who the hell they were. But that game was an early release for Super. It's rare as hell now. But it's a beat 'em up. It's a beat 'em up. Like it's such a wild thing, but there's so many little jokes in there. I hadn't really played it, but then there's a sequel that came out too to the game. So there's 2 of these games on Nintendo Switch, Slaps and Beans. Like it's not like in my best list, but it was just like, you're talking classically British like Horus, and that definitely fits in there too. It's like there's a whole, culture of classic European British PCs, micro PCs.
Yeah.
That's it. The ZX Spectrum, for example, has a lot of that. That's probably, I'm not 100%, but it's probably where Horus was originally on. And I said it correctly, ZX Spectrum. But like, it's just like a PC generation that like we as ugly ass Americans, ignorant Americans don't understand. But it is a style.
So cool.
And there are indie games that are in that realm. There are tons of them that come out that because the creators were inspired by that generation. And there are some that I will cover in Indie Gaming Gems.
Well, that reminds me of a game that has that aesthetic that I actually did a review for that I gave this game like a total bad score because I did not like it. It was a game called Deep Ones. I don't know if you played that. It's like it almost feels like a Commodore 64 kind of game. Like it's very choppy and I remember I did the review of it and I just did not like it. But there were a lot of people on the other side that were just like, this game is freaking awesome. What are you talking about? And I think it's because like the nostalgia it wasn't hitting, like they were nostalgic towards that.
When did you start gaming when you were young?
That's like Atari 2600. Like I didn't really, I didn't get into the whole like Commodore 64 like computer stuff.
For me, I did, but it was like, so Atari is what I got from like my brother and my sister. That's what I inherited, and I got like the Junior later with Mario Brothers on and everything. Original Mario Brothers Atari style, but then there's the NES, but Commodore's in the middle. Commodore was a step up from Atari, almost at Nintendo. So any of those NES games that we didn't like, we had to press up to jump. That was actually a port from a Commodore game because there's only one button, just like Atari. Now, the Amiga is after Nintendo, before Super Nintendo, and sometimes advanced beyond it. The Amiga's the next generation in there. But like Commodore, like I have a super nostalgia for Commodore. But was it Commodore or was it more micro PC?
I think it might have
more limitations.
Yeah, I just remember like thinking back, it was just the green screen stuff. That's what.
That is not Commodore 64. That is ZX Spectrum or Apple II before it moved to color screens, because the original Apple IIs were like green screen.
That's what Deep Woods was very inspired by, because it was very, like there was like 2 or 3 colors and that was it. But it was,
ZX Spectrum. Yeah, so Commodore had full colors and everything. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't get into it. But I thought it was interesting that I was like a game. I was like, man, this game freaking sucks. But, there was like another side of folks that were like, they had that nostalgia and they were like, man, this is freaking awesome. And it's just because I didn't grow up during that time. I was like, nah, I didn't play it.
Well, and that time was still around the, NES era. So it's still in your area. It wasn't in your region, honestly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's where it's like the ignorant, ugly Americans, like we don't understand it. And like there are some indie games out there that have them, and there's been a few that I played and I actually loved them, and they had that limitation to it, but the controls were tight. And that was the thing about the ZX was everybody that I talked to, I've had, chats with Larry Bundy Jr. a lot and everything from the years, and like ZX has tight ass controls. The controls are amazing. So if the game tries to use the visual inspirations, but then it's missing the mark on other stuff, it's like, okay, you got the visuals, but you missed the actual mark on the gameplay. And that was a piece. I guess we've been off on a rabbit hole, but I would say one of mine that I have in the next one, apparently I'm going backward on the list, kind of set the standard for what I consider an interesting game where I need to stop playing games for 2 minutes and not going back to them for a long time. The one I'm talking about it's called Dead Cells. I don't know if you've heard of Dead Cells. And Dead Cells is a game that I played the original version. And, this is something that they updated tons and tons of times.
Yeah.
I played the original. I thought it was okay. I didn't understand it because I didn't know what the hell a roguelike was. I like to play games and master games and not die. And so I didn't understand, no, that's the goal. You're going to die. You're going to get better. You're going to unlock a few more things and your next run's going to be a little stronger. You're going to keep doing this. And I completely get it now. Like I love roguelikes, but I didn't understand that I need to go through this, learn the lot, get good, like memorize things, and I'll be stronger and stronger going through it. What actually got me into this game, and then I realized how much of a masterpiece, was when they did the Castlevania DLC. When they did that, that was the reinvigoration of video game bullshit after my cousin Kyle passed away. We decided to do episode 101 was Dead Cells Castlevania, because we did tons of Castlevania video game bullshit back in the Kyle era. And so playing that, then realizing, oh shit, I missed like a whole meta game to this Dead Cells thing. and then unlocking it, being able to beat the actual main Dead Cells game, and then you start getting the heat or whatever it is, the little red dots, so you can play it on hard, extra hard. Like, I was 4 of them in, or something. It was insane. I was in almost like super hard. I actually was able to get through the whole Castlevania section, fighting Dracula, everything, beating that portion too. Like, I was obsessed, and this was over the course of a few weeks.
That's so cool.
Beats the hell out of it. Loved it.
I lied. Yeah.
You know what was wild though is that one of the co-hosts, because I had a couple on that episode, they just didn't get the DLC or something. Whatever version they played didn't have the Castlevania DLC on it. They never popped up, and I'm like, yeah, you literally just go in and they're there. So I don't know if it was
that's what got me into it. That's what got me into Dead Cells, because I always heard a lot of my friends being like, "Oh man, if you play Dead Cells, it's so awesome." Blah blah blah. And I looked at it, I'm like, "Yeah, it looks fun." But when they were like, "Yeah, we're making the Castlevania DLC," I'm like, I'm a big Castlevania fan, so I was like, I gotta.
I don't know what you're talking about Castlevania. So I got the Flame Whip from Castlevania from the Power around my Metroid and Zelda.
Oh yeah, so you know. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll go ahead and give it a play. And it's funny that you're mentioning it, because just a couple of days ago, my well, not a couple of days, but my sister got married, and before her marriage or whatever, my nephew came down, and we were playing Dead Cells. Like, he had never played it before, and I'm like, man, check this out. And he hadn't even really played a whole lot of Castlevania either, but he heard the Vampire Killer song. He's like, man, the music's really good. And I'm like, that's right. Yes, it is.
You're damn right it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. But he really likes it. But he, the kind of gamer he is, he loves Monster Hunter and does Minecraft. But when he was 7 or 8 years old, he had 300 hours in the Breath of the Wild. This kid could tell me how to strategically kill Lionels by the frame. So crazy. Yeah. So I'm like, you need to dive into the roguelike stuff. I think you would really like it. I'm like, it's got a lot of numbers. It's got a lot of stuff you can crunch. It's like, it's good stuff though. Love that game.
Dude, that's freaking wild. And the thing is that there's another game that's in that realm now, and I haven't played enough of it. Same deal. I need to stop only playing these games for a little bit. It's called Death's Gambit Aftermath. And apparently it's in the same realm. It's supposed to be equally as good. I have the physical, on Switch and all that.
I've heard of it.
Huh. Yeah. I played a little bit of it, and it was cool. But again, didn't play enough to get engrossed in the game. And it's another one of those platformer roguelike Metroidvanias that just looks exactly like Dead Cells in the same realm. Freaking wildness.
Let's see. I'm trying to get the indie developer's name on the game I'm talking about.
Ooh, magic.
Because
so while you're looking that up, I actually got something in the mail, and have you heard of it? It's the new Nintendo console. Have you gotten it in the mail yet? New Nintendo console was released within the last 2 weeks.
Oh no. What do you mean?
It's called Nintendo Alarmo.
I was about to say. You're talking about the alarm clock.
Because you mentioned Breath of the Wild. I actually have the clock now. I'm using it as my alarm clock, and I woke up to I think it's the big rock guys. That was the song that I woke up to this morning.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Dun 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 dun. That's what woke me up this morning. Of course, I turned off the stupid. I call it stupid because I don't want to have to jump up out of bed. The motion sensors.
Oh, yeah.
I have to smack it on the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I had to realize that, I can set it on certain days. I didn't go to the settings. So yeah, I turned it off for the weekend so I don't have to wake up at freaking 5:30 in the morning like I do during the weekdays. But I'm but yeah, it's funny. It's I already turned off the motion sensors. Because the other piece is if you have other people in your house or pets, the motion sensors will get messed up. It's meant for single people. So I just hit the damn thing, turn it off. My wife said it's better than Mark Riboulet yelling, "Get the fuck out of bed, bitch, go." So,
well, the game I want to mention is Bat Boy.
Oh,
Bat Boy is a lot of fun. This kind of goes hand in hand with Shovel Knight because this kind of has a very Mega Man kind of feel to it, but it's a totally different mechanic. because you have a baseball bat, so like you can actually hit the projectiles and hit the enemies, and it did have a physical, looked like it was with limited run, and Danjin Entertainment. That's what I'm looking at. Yeah, and the developers were X Plus. Like, oh man, but yeah, I freaking love Bat Boy.
Actually got a lot of heat for Bat Boy because I covered it in the unconventional side of the Metroidvania Chronicles, because there is some backtracking you have to do within the game.
Yeah, there is.
The necessity of backtracking. People in the Metroidvania community are very particular about what they consider, and nobody can agree on what they consider a Metroidvania. I say anything can be anything, and I can justify it, but I have an unconventional section specifically for that.
Yeah.
So I actually wrote a lot about Bat Boy. Bat Boy's a great game.
I freaking love it.
Reminds me of Strike Man in the Mega Man 9 and 10 when you started to get the crazy guys. Like, there's Strike Man, and it's all sports related. Bat Boy is back.
Oh, yeah.
Some classics. So I have my last one on the list, but then I have the one that I didn't list on there. So the one on my list is probably one of my favorite indie games of all time. But the one that isn't on my list, and I think we may have talked about in a previous episode, let's talk about genre creation, and it's within the last 2 years. Let's talk about Vampire Survivors.
Oh,
You're talking best indie games of all time. Like a tiny team made it, charged a couple bucks for it, sold millions and millions of copies. It literally eats up hours of our life just having fun. You know what I mean? Like,
such a good game. A game that
we got our co-host over here, Gizmo.
Yeah. It was a game that, I didn't think I was going to enjoy as much as I did, because I kind of saw it and I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool. And I started playing it, and when I think the first time I played, I lasted like 5 or 6 minutes, and I was like, I got to keep on doing this. Like, this is getting good. I love Vampire Survivors.
They're so fun. And the thing is, they keep on releasing more and more. And you mentioned Contra. There's Contra now, and they actually changed some of the mechanics to where you're actually shooting spread and doing crazy shit. And
that's so cool.
Levels and power-ups. I mean, hell, I got Contra tattoos as well.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But but Vampire Survivors is one of those games too that I like, because you don't have to really pay attention. It's kind of like you just enjoy it. Like, it's unwind, relax.
It kind of does the same thing that like bullet hells do for me. Like, I don't know, man. I play a bullet hell, and it's like I kind of just zone out. Like, it's one of those kind of games where I'm just like watching all the bullets, and I'm just kind of like in like almost a zen mode, and that's something I found with Vampire Survivors when I was playing it. I was like,
what's weird is, like, you mentioned bullet hells. I don't have any bullet hells in the list, but I used to be a huge shoot 'em up fan. Like horizontal, like Spriggan on the turbo PC engines. Like,
oh yeah,
that time, shit like that. And over the years, I've grown away from them, grown apart from them. But now the fact that I understand roguelikes, including Vampire Survivors, where you die a lot, it's okay, because you're gonna unlock more stuff and get further the next time. I probably would be able to get in a zen mode in the shoot 'em up genre. I might be able to play a lot more of them now. It's like, they're few and far between on my list anymore, because I'm like particular with what I like, and so the ones I'm covering on like Indie Gaming Gems are like, they stand out. They're like,
well, I have a suggestion. If you're looking to play a really good shooter, it's one that I always like champion, and it's on the Switch. It's probably on Steam as well, but Rolling Gunner.
Oh, I definitely have Rolling Gunner.
Oh, dude, Rolling Gunner's so good.
You know what's crazy about Rolling Gunner is I had the opportunity to release it physically.
Oh man,
because you think about it, there was a company that was doing physicals, and Rolling Gunner was one of their 3 games, and then they went under. They were doing tins. They were doing like physical tins or something. Yeah. They had went away, and then it popped up, but I don't remember what it was. I don't know if they were doing some kind of like, they were maybe trying to market it. But I remember Rolling Gunner was in the talkings during the first year that I was running premium. And I was like, I think the game's dope. I think it's cool. But it ended up they ended up going with who they have the physical with now. I think they did a double pack. I think.
Yeah. I ended up getting the physical off of Play Asia.
Yeah, but I can't remember who released it or whatever. Like this, maybe it was Play Asia actually, Play Exclusives. The physical, but because there was a certain point I had all the limited Play Asias, Play Exclusives. That might be how I have it too. But yeah, that was an interesting one. I almost signed that damn one physically.
Oh man,
crazy,
awesome.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we don't have any currently out, but we have some signed. I'll tell you that for print.
Let me see. Well, my next game I'm going to talk about is it's one of my favorite small little teams from Joy Masher. They're folks that did Blazing Chrome and Oniken, which is another great game. But the game I'm going to talk about is a Vengeful Guardian Moonrider.
Oh my God, that game!
This game is
iconic like, feelings.
Man, it's got so many elements of the games I love from that era. Like there's like some Strider elements, there's some Shinobi 3 elements, it's some Mega Man's thrown in there. It's just got this really cool like cyber look to it. It was one of those games that I was really sad when I finished it. I was like, fuck, man. Like, that's it? It was so, like, man. And that's a really small team.
So what would it take for you to feel like somebody who hasn't played it more than 1 second to boot it up? I probably need to play that damn game and experience it for the first time.
I'm telling you, get the lighting in the room good, get some good tequila, get some pickle juice.
Well, I'm almost thinking the pickle juice is gone. I'm almost thinking that we need to do like you got live streams of games you haven't played, like in Undertale, and then I got ones I haven't played, like Vengeful Guardian Moonrider, and we cross stream them, and enjoy and watch.
Yeah,
play it live and comment while we have it. Like, I'm just thinking of like that might be a fun series thing to do in conjunction with this. It's like, all right, today we're gonna actually watch you play. Let's and it's like we're doing a game night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like indie game night or something like that. Because like, how would it feel if you got to experience that game, or watch somebody experience that game for the first time? Because I haven't watched any videos.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that game's right up your alley. Like you get like once you actually like sit down and give it a good go. Because what I really like about it too is it's not a super difficult game. It's not. Blazing Chrome was a lot more.
Blazing Chrome's hard as shit.
Yeah, Blazing Chrome was challenging. Oniken had its moments.
I haven't played Oniken a lot. I haven't physically, but I have.
Yeah, Oniken takes a lot of inspiration from like NES Strider.
Okay,
it's fun, and but yeah,
and for those listeners that don't know, NES Strider is not like the arcade Strider.
Right.
It's its own thing. It actually has a lot of like non-linear portions to it. It's if you can get past the nuances of the control limitations, it's an excellent game.
But yeah, it definitely has its own aesthetic to it compared to the arcade. So yeah, that's a good note right there. It was great. I liked Oniken, but Vengeful Guardian Moonriders, it was just, it's got a cool title too, a cool name, like Vengeful Guardian Moonriders.
I mean, the character, how it looks and everything, it always reminds me of like Hagane.
Yeah.
Every time I see it, like that's what it reminds me of, but it's not the same. It's not the same as Hagane.
And that was one of those games that I remember seeing as just like a concept on like social media, because I followed Joy Masher on like Twitter or whatever. And I remember when he was just making the concepts of it and was like showing like little clips, like, oh, this is when Blazing Chrome had already came out. Like a week later, he's like, oh, this new game I'm working on, I'm wanting to get some like movement, like he's like Richter Belmont or something. And it was like showing like this little model. And that was like the first like kind of Vengeful Guardian Moonrider clip. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like a lot of indie developers are working on their next thing as they're putting the polish and the finishing touches on their they're current. I mean, there's developers that I've worked with and published, and they've showed me 2 or 3 other games that look amazing. I mean, my next game is a perfect example because they had announced the sequel, and they're still haven't at this year at the end of 2024 still not released it. I mean, mine on there, one of the other amazing fucking indie games is Hollow Knight.
Oh yeah,
dude, Hollow Knight is one of those games where, like, you know, Silksound is still not out, and they were been working on it, but they want to make sure that it is equally as impactful. But Hollow Knight hit gold, like it struck gold. It was out at the right time, did the right things, right around this Dark Souls era too, where it did the Dark Souls style of Metroidvanias, where it introduced this thing called corpse running, where you die and you got to go get your stuff. Shovel Knight does it too, for sure. When you die, you have to go get your stuff. What's interesting is this one falls along my trappings of taking long pauses and stopping. So I played this game for like hours, a couple different settings. Like when it first came out, when I first got my physical on Switch, which I had the collector's edition, which is the really cool with the heart locket and everything. And I played it and I got frustrated because I just kept dying. And again, didn't really understand the roguelike mentality of like, keep playing, keep getting better, keep leveling up, get your skills down. Again, Dark Souls themed.
Yeah.
You get better with the skills. And then it was those, the Switch Mini playcast I was doing years back when we were covering all the Switch stuff. And I had fired it up randomly and it clicked. It clicked. I started to get understand all the boss patterns, the boss rushes, went through the whole game, obsessed for like months, just playing everything. And this is like, I would randomly find the DLCs that were located in certain places and go through those, and got through every single piece of that game. It was such an immersive experience. I got it. The world is insane because you're like, you know, this hollowness with all these insects. Yeah, how is this gonna? But it is perfect, and there's not a whole lot of, you know, words in it. It's all no shit, and you get to see this whole like underground civilization like evolve and decay and get crazy as you play it. It was like one of the best experiences that I had in a long time. And the indie developer friggin' made it, which is crazy.
Yeah,
Jerry's tiny, and so. You think about it, like when everybody has these, like, I want to play Silksong, like, okay, but it's a small team. Like, if they want to, and the thing is, I have respect for them for not just hiring out and exploding their team so they can get the game done. They kept it small so that way they can have the control, keep that same feeling. Terrifier 3, we had already mentioned, they kept that game indie, even though, you know, Damien Leone could have taken that movie and, you know, modernized it with major like film companies. He kept it indie so he can make it how he wants to make it. That is, if Hollow Knight developers, Team Cherry is doing that with Silksong, we're going to be in store for a treat when it comes out.
Oh yeah, that's
freaking wild, man.
Well, the last game that I was going to mention, and it kind of follows in that Hollow Knightness. This is another Metroidvania. It's Infernax.
Oh,
Infernax. It has that inspiration of Castlevania 2 and Zelda 2, which usually a lot of people are like, but they're exactly like that. But but it fixes a lot of that, and I love.
I am a huge defender of Castlevania 2, but there is plenty of ROM hacks out there. There's one called Castlevania Redacted that is such a great version. We covered it after episode 1. It was the last episode I ever recorded with Kyle, where we talked about that game, and it fixes all the stuff. And the game is a masterpiece. If you play it, you get rid of all the dumb shit, the dumb stuff that Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest did. I mean, the XP was wrong. There was a lot of text that was mistranslated, and then there's like blindfalls and stuff. It gets rid of all that stuff, and it makes the game like a solid Castlevania. So Infernax is like that, like,
and they also add like the decision making. That's what I really liked about it. You know, like, oh, you want to either save this guy or let him get killed, or and it's like whatever decision you make would, kind of change your next build, like your.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so like it had its replayability with that, and I thought that was really cool. That was a game I had a lot of fun playing. I would stream that one every once in a while.
And I have not played that one. I have the physical. Again, I have not played.
So good. So good.
Yeah. That was a double pack one? Like, was it or was it not?
I don't know. I got it digitally.
Okay.
I just bought it.
Because there's these two games with the NES style graphics, and then there's other games that have their own standalone. So I could be getting them confused too. 100%. So, I mentioned earlier, I did want to add some of the premium edition games specific versions because, again, I have a specific nostalgia being, personally connected with physical releases of these games and being able to preserve them. You had mentioned Zelda 2. The first game that's on my list at the top is Phoenotopia Awakening. And if you haven't played Phoenotopia Awakening, it is a masterpiece. I had never seen, because I mentioned like there's a premium fall direct coming. I actually did this direct at Midwest Gaming Classic back in 2020. I think it was 2021-ish. I did it live on a stage. I had never gotten a standing ovation from a game trailer before. Nobody had heard of it. And this game had already been out at this point. And it is such an amazing title. And the reason why I say Zelda 2 is it's a Metroidvania feel, but the overworld has the Zelda 2 aesthetic where you go in the overworld and then you have little enemies that hit you and then you go into a side-scrolling mode.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, but the controls are spot on. It's challenging for bosses, but it's very fair. It's very amazing. Gets into like almost like a cyber aspect near the end too. So it starts off Zelda style, like there's a lot of fantasy, but it gets to cyber piece. The thing is I've added context to each of these in my notes. This one, the developer didn't want us to do a physical of it because they said the game wasn't worth it.
Oh,
it wasn't great. And I'm like,
that sucks.
But he's like, well, we had already reached out to him because I had played the game. I was like, this is a masterpiece, like 10 out of 10 S tier game. He didn't think it was good enough. He was like, well, that's because it didn't sell well online. And I'm like, well, at no point in our conversation did we ask about digital sales. Like, we know that when people play it, they're going to love it. And there's a whole online community in Japan that they're obsessed with the main character, Gale. She has like pink hair. She looks cute.
Yeah.
It's the artwork's great. The aesthetics are awesome. The whole world has personality that when you talk to it, it draws you in. And then everything from the animation on how the character moves to the actual different types of attacks and things and items you get. It's awesome. It draws you in. And like this guy didn't think his game was good enough. And I'm like, dude.
What's funny is because you were mentioning the game, so I was pulling it up. And like, like when you put it in Google for the search, like one of the first thing that came up was physical edition.
Yeah.
So that's like the top thing. Like when people look up this game, they're like, I want to buy a physical of it.
Yeah. And that's the thing with a lot of these is that like there were hidden indie games out there. The next one that's on my list for these premium ones, it's a robot named Fight. And this one made by Matt Bittner. Infinite Super Metroid. So if you like Super Metroid, this game is infinite. It's roguelike. And I just wrote in my notes the genius of this game. Think about millions and millions and millions of computations to be able to do Super Metroid forever. Like, and it unlocks like Binding of Isaac. So as you play through the game, you can unlock different abilities as you continue to progress and do different things, get different achievements. You unlock a new ability. And there's different traversal things. Like one example is you have this, like, you'll unlock this dash movement. But then in other ones, you won't get the dash movement and you'll get a Sonic spin move in a Metroid game. You also, if you know advanced Super Metroid techniques, you can do wall jumps and stuff just from the beginning and kind of like get to areas you're not supposed to. And it's made with that in mind and has little secrets and treats there to unlock. And then there's this whole scraps system with shrines where you can donate things and you can kind of manipulate the system based on what you can find in the roguelike side. So that you can like make yourself overpowered if you know what to donate and how much to donate, which I wrote a strategy guide on it with the developer, which was awesome. But like I created a way for gamers to kind of manipulate the system, and the online guides are wrong. So if you try to use the online guides and do this, you'll be frustrated because it's not going to work. Because I talked to the guy who created the algorithms. Like, oh, wow. It is wild. It is amazing. So like, and that was technically our first game we signed for premium.
Yeah,
this game. It was the third or fourth game released, and that was only because he was doing updates and we wanted to put everything on there. He had a 2-player, 4-player mode on it. You can technically play that with your family, and they can be little orbs to help you out and assist you in the game. Like it's in a Metroidvania multiplayer. Like it's wild. Like
that's a fun game.
Game is a damn masterpiece. And then the next game I have on the list, it goes hand in hand because it's also made by Matt Bittner, but it's called Carl.
I saw that. I was like,
yeah,
Carl.
And why I added that one is the game with the cute robot in it that Nintendo is programming. And so Nintendo has been working on it, but it's a straight up platformer though. You have a hub world and you go into the levels, and it's not a Metroidvania, it's a platformer. What's cool about that one is that game is just like cutesy and fun. It just has like such a cool graphical aesthetic. You can really like, because Nintendo is like one of those wholesome YouTubers. Like he's just a nice guy. And that game is like Nintendo in a video game. Like it's literally like there's a character in there, like an NPC. I swear it's him in the game. But he's actually adding more content to it still to this day. So like we haven't released the physical of it yet, but it is a really cool one. And then Bittner is part of it. So showing that if he gets support with people buying Robot Named Fight, which I think we're on our second or third pay run of that game with Robot Named Fight, like people, they will be able to make new games. And so preservation continues. We get more indie games if we support indie games. It's such a cool feeling.
Yeah.
So did you look up Carl? Like now you know what it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is pretty sweet.
Just an addictive, fun thing, man. The final game that I have on here, I only picked 4. It's a game that I'm talking about the importance of supporting indie and supporting physicals and supporting smaller publishers, because this game's called Curse Crackers. It has handheld inspirations. If you look at it, it looks like Game Boy Color style platformer. When you play it too, the controls are so spot on that it's like you're almost like an acrobat, like as you play through the levels, and it's like has like a little bit of a Kirby feel to it too. Like it's a really fun, very well polished platformer. But this game right here, it's an important piece because this developer has 2 other games that they've created. One is called Prodigal. The other one is just on Kickstarter called Veritas, which I covered in episode 1 of Indie Gaming Gems. And they're both like Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, Legend of Zelda, Oracle series video games, and they're freaking outstanding. But this developer, if the games don't sell super well or aren't crazy, he's not going to port those to Switch and PlayStation. And so they'll be just subjected to the Steam, unfortunately. So the importance of supporting indie developers, like supporting the physical of Curse Crackers that's come out, is extremely important, because then they'll continue to do more and more porting.
Indeed. Yeah, that's what I always try to stress to folks sometimes when, like, you know, indie games coming out and their first question is like, is it going to have a physical? I'm like, you know, if you really want a physical, get it digital. You know, if that's something, and I hate to say it because you get essentially a double dip, but if it's something you really like, you know, I will double dip a game. Like if I get it digitally and then he come up with the physical, I'll buy the physical too. You know, just to show my support.
I mean, I understand that mentality. I also understand the mentality of that not everybody can afford to buy and tons of stuff.
It's true.
So
very, very
I'm
true.
I'm not going to subject somebody to, hey, you got to buy both. But you do need to at least show your support in any way that you possibly can, whether that's just sharing it, because it's companies need to find out about it too. So if it's a really cool game, I mean, Phoenotopia Awakening is a perfect example where if it didn't sell well online, like we weren't looking at digital sales, so okay, cool, but the game's still a masterpiece. I found out about it, so still going to sign it as a company at that time. You know what I mean? So there is importance of both those aspects. So my daughter running around using the microwave over here. Like, it'd be fun. So that does cover, I think, all of our top indie games. I had to throw the premium stuff in there because otherwise, I mean, I'm got to talk about some of the cool stuff that premium has. And there is one more game that's coming out in the fall direct that probably one of my favorite games that we're going to release of all time. So once you see it, you'll know what it is as soon as you see it, Xander, and like everybody will know exactly what game it is once it's announced. But like,
oh yeah,
it's a fucking amazing game. So I always continually loving it. So we can go over the newest games that we played over the week. Since we recorded. I mean, we can start like. You're in the same boat. My life has been Pinball Spire. I started playing it. It's insane. Like I still haven't gotten. Actually, no, I think I did. I think I got one more power up now finally. But like I unlocked a couple of skins, so like I got like a little bandana.
Wow.
I got a little bandana now. I'm in a second biome because Metroidvanias have biomes at different levels. There's a new biome and it's like almost like a cathedral or something.
Oh wow,
super cool. What I love about it though is that you don't die per se. Like you really can't lose. Like normal pinball, you lose, you get game over, you have to start again and get new scores. Like all you do is you fall down and you just get hit right back up and you just continue. It's like a very soothing game. Like it's just you just keep playing. You'll eventually get through the puzzles, get through the levels, and you won't necessarily quote unquote die.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. I don't know how much of Pinball Spire you've played so far, but
I haven't played much of it because I got really caught up with Gunlord. That's been my and that was something I wasn't expecting to play a whole lot. That was like a game I was like, oh yeah, I had the CRT hooked up. I was like, oh man, I can hook up my Dreamcast, and I'm like, play some Gunlord, and I start playing it and just playing it. But yeah, Pinball Spire looks really good though.
Dude, it's so polished, and I'm gonna continue playing it. I will, but I also continue to play Auros or Oros.
That's another one I need to dive into,
dude. And it's like I'm in world 8 of 11 I call it on the main screen. So I don't know if like I get through those 11 worlds if there's another block, but I am going through the levels and it's so chill. So I'll just sit there and just like sit down. I'll put on some Oros and I'll just play a few. If you get stuck, you just hit the little hand button. It shows you where the lines need to go. Then you can just be, all right, let me move them around here to continue on. And it's dope. I didn't realize this, but when you go through it and you play it on the Steam Deck version, it's initially starts it off like it looks like a block, like a CRT square. You can actually stretch it to or set it to full screen. I didn't know that. So now I'm playing it out full screen. It actually looks good now. I was like, oh shit. Okay. So, but you can literally use your fingers too to move it around, like touchscreen on the Steam Deck. So I've been using the touchscreen on it. But it's just a chill thing I did a little bit before going to work this morning. I'm like, all right, we'll play some more Oracle. Like it's every day I'm doing a little bit of Oros.
Yeah, I still need to dive into that. You know if it was released on mobile? Is it a mobile game too?
I don't know. Let's look it up.
That sounds like a fun, like a good game to play on the phone, to be honest.
It is a mobile game. It's on the Google Play Store.
Oh, cool. I'll put it on my my phone for sure.
It's on the Apple as well. Yeah, it's a chill game. Like it is fun as hell.
Because I mean, I put Vampire Survivors on my phone. Like I play that every once in a while. Like I'm just.
Oh, I had Turtles Shredder's Revenge on my phone. Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing to talk about the newest indie games, because I think we had mentioned it, the Halloween Ash versus Evil Dead indie game that's come out is way cooler than I thought. Like it is.
Yeah,
So I thought that they were releasing a Halloween game and an Ash versus Evil Dead game. That is not what they did. I don't know if you realize this. They didn't release those. They released a game world. And in this game world, you can play as Michael Myers in the Michael Myers world. You can play as Ash in the Ash world. You can play as Laurie Strode, and you can play as, I think, the female from Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Those games.
They all play different.
But the thing that's crazy is you can play as Michael Myers in the Evil Dead world and Ash in Halloween world. Now, the same company, same developers are creating the Terrifier arcade game. And you start off in the arcade, and you can see the two arcades for Ash vs. Evil Dead and Halloween. And if you only own one, you only see one arcade if you buy it digitally. So, obviously, let me do the logical conclusion here for the listeners. That arcade is probably just going to be another arcade in there. And now you can play in the Terrifier world. You can play with Art the Clown in Evil Dead or Michael Myers in the Terrifier world. Think about that. Like, it's literally the same developers and same pixel style. Everything's the same. So, we already know that there's going to be a Terrifier world in this game world, which is so freaking cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I was watching some gameplay footage before we started the show. I was watching it and I was like, man, this looks really, really cool. Like,
actually, I ordered the physical.
Yeah, because I mean, at first I was like, oh, it's a Michael Myers game. That's cool. Like that might be like a little fun game to play. But when I actually saw like how the worlds actually intertwine and like every character has their own, like every character plays a little different. And even Michael Myers, like I love the fact that he just walks. Like he doesn't run or anything. He just walks the whole time. It's really cool. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, then you got Ash, who's like all over the place with his chainsaw hand. It's old Ash from Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is cool. But yeah, it's way cooler. So, it's still way forward. So it's not super, super indie anymore, even though they are still indie to me.
Yeah.
There's physicals out there already. So it's already kind of cheating the indie game realm. But just because it has a physical doesn't mean it's not indie. So let's be real.
Indeed.
You got a tiny bit of on the horizon. Got a little clarification from the last episode. The community recommendation that we had talked about, Shattered Ninja, was the one we were alluding to. So we got to look it up so we can talk about Shattered Ninja. But yeah, Shattered Ninja looks like such a cool Ninja Gaiden style game.
Yeah, it's you know what it made me think of? It made me think of it's a Devolver Cyber Ninja, or is it Devolver
Cyber Shadow?
That's what it made me think of when I saw it. It has a very
so when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is what I wanted out of the Shadow of the Ninja remake.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is exactly because the thing is, you look up screenshots too. There's like the little ninja guy and then giant mech bosses.
Yeah, it is.
Like there's this game looks amazing. And ironically, you do Shattered Ninja and Shadow of the Ninja shows what Kage says.
Yeah.
Dude, it's such a cool world that we live in, that we got like multiple games coming out in the same genre all at the same freaking time. Like, it's ridiculous to me.
Brand new ninja game.
I don't know if you had time to look at the other two that I posted, but I just found some really crazy games this week. Sky Ocean's Wings for Hire was this one that I saw. And like when you look at the screenshots, like, what do you think? Because I had something that popped in my mind, and as soon as I saw it, and it's something from like the Dreamcast era. I don't know if you ever played the Skies of Arcadia series.
It's always it's funny because I even had it on the GameCube at one point, and it's one of those games I always wanted to dive into, but I just I'd play it a little bit and then I would end up playing something else. But
well, and the thing is that it's on Amazon and Target, so I don't even know. Like, obviously, it already has a physical, but I hadn't even heard of this game. P-Cube is the actual.
I like P-Cube
releaser, so they have a pretty good penchant on finding cool stuff. The game looks super polished, so I still feel like, and this is the hard thing for me as I'm like creating things, is if you don't go on like Steam. It was when I was creating the Switch Collector series. Like, P-Cube looks like they're the developer. They're not.
Yeah.
They're the publisher. So it's like, well, who actually created this game? And a lot of times they don't want you to know. It's like, dude, I want to know the creators of the game. But yeah, Sky Ocean's Wings for Hire looks like a really cool game that's based off Skies of Arcadia. Has some shoot 'em up sections. But the last one I chose, which actually goes on with your first choice of, way back when we started talking about your favorite indie games of all time. What was your first game that you talked about?
Limbo.
So go ahead and look up Neva. And guess what the developers of Neva, guess what other game they made? They made Gris, Gris, another amazing style game. They all look like your style of game that one of your favorite games. Like, this is just one of those emotional style.
Yeah, I love it. It kind of makes me think of another great art style. Loves like Capcom's Okami. It kind of has that Okami kind of look, that very pastel kind of feel to it. It's pretty cool.
And I mean, they're, a little more known, even though, like you said, it's the developer's name. Nobody's going to know this.
Yeah.
But the digital publisher is Devolver. So it's going to get a physical from Devolver. Special Reserve's dead, but Devolver's still releasing games. So when Devolver gets behind them, they help the teams finish the games, and we get amazing little fun physicals from them. So at least this one will be preserved as well. But yeah, these games were all released this last week since we talked. Like, crazy freaking amazing games.
Yeah, jeez.
Like, and these games are not like pixelated mini games. Like,
I'll tell you a game that I would that I want to put over the horizon that I saw from an Instagram ad.
Ooh.
Yeah, it is this game called Tanuki Pond Summer. Okay.
Tanuki Pond Summer. Really?
Yeah.
What is this one about?
It's got kind of like that slice of life look to it. You play as this Tanuki, okay? And you're trying to have like this big party at the end of summer. So you're trying to bring money. So you start trying to like mail packages, but you have a BMX bike. So you can do all these cool tricks. And then you become friends with the village, and like, you start playing baseball, you learn how to sumo wrestle, and it just has it has a really cool little art style to it.
I'm looking at it. It looks like Goat Simulator. It's just something that my daughter likes.
Yeah.
But like, it's not. It's like you have all these extra pieces. So it looks like it's almost like Shenmue with the Tanuki.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of I don't know, in some parts it was like kind of just brought me back to like the PlayStation 1, PS2 era, like adventure games, Well,
the graphics looks like that Ni no Kuni style.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun, but that was just a random game I saw like while like scrolling on Instagram, and at first I was like, oh, what's this? And I was just like, oh man, this looks like a fun, chill game.
And I looked up Pawn Summer. It's Pawn's Summer.
Yeah.
Pawn's Summer, yeah. Oh, yeah, that game looks cool. I'll have to add it to the list. Add it to the list of community style for the... That's a cool one. Yeah, hopefully that game, comes out soon, or if it already is out, hopefully it's getting some sales, because...
Oh, it hasn't came out yet, but I put it on my wish list on Steam. But it is coming out to consoles as well. It's coming out for like PS5 and Switch.
Okay, nice. if they don't have a physical, then hopefully it's open.
Indeed.
That would be cool. I think that gets through most of the list here for the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well, before we wrap it up again, just for our listeners, let's mention the stuff that they can find us at, and of course, our Discord, and, all the stuff we can open the show with, just to leave a last impression.
Okay. Yeah. We do some stuff with some places. Now, so I mean, obviously, if you look up Indie Gaming Gems on Facebook, we got a community going with a bunch of posts, a lot of posts going every week, talking about sharing our favorite games that we find. I'm only posting a couple because I still want to leave some for the podcast and some for the show. But I'm going to post in there when I find something super cool. Need to talk more about Pinball Spire in there, maybe get people excited. Maybe as we play stuff, talk more about there. Same with our Discord. Discord, whenever there's a new episode, new podcast, as well as there's different types of requests and different types of community picks that show up in that one. Those will be going in there as well in the Discord. And then, of course, every Friday, there will be a new episode of Indie Gaming Gems going up on YouTube. Eventually, get to the whole first season. That'll be physical release, which will be fun.
Indeed. And again, is this always finding out new games to play? Every time we do an episode, I'm so glad we have the Google Docs, because I can look at the games we talked about in the last episode and be because I'm always just trying to catch up. And Pinball Spire, by the time we do episode 4, I'll be talking about some Pinball Spire. You're like, dude, that was 2 episodes ago. What are you talking about?
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll still be playing it. I mean, the things I don't move on that fast, but it's great. But the other piece is, I think I did delete out some of the stuff from episode 2, so we got to make sure we write our synopsis of the episodes before we move on, because we do take our time with the podcast.
Indeed. Let it marinate.
It's fun, man.
But anyway, guys, yes, this concludes another episode of the Incredible Podcast. And be sure to check out our Discord. Check out everything in the description should lead you the way to extend your play of indie games.
All day.
That is off the top of my head. Oh, yeah.